Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author, and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
Hey, it's William, and welcome to today's episode of the Catalytic Leadership Podcast. Each week, we tackle a topic related to the field of leadership. My goal is to ensure that you have actionable steps you can take from each episode to grow in your own leadership. Growth doesn't just happen. My goal is to help you become intentional about it. Each week, we spotlight leaders from a variety of fields, organizations, and locations. And my goal is for you to see that leaders can be catalytic no matter where they are or what they lead. I draw inspiration from the stories and journeys of these leaders, and I hear from many of you that you do too. Let's jump into today's interview. I am thrilled today to have Alex Schlinsky on the show. Alex founded and runs an entrepreneurial mastermind and mentorship community called Prospecting on Demand. His agency's won multiple awards, and he offers a 5 times ROI guarantee to all his clients. Outside of coaching entrepreneurs, Alex is the CEO of Sky Social Media, a unique digital marketing firm that caters directly to his clients' needs, focusing on results and ROI with advertising across all digital platforms. They call him the Iron Man of marketing, which has an insane story behind it. Something to do with having open heart surgery at 29 and sounding like a human time bomb. Like Tony Stark, he likes to play big. Not many people can say they helped a full-time plumber create an agency that now generates over $2 million a year. A renowned business coach, speaker, and entrepreneur, Alex has sold $15 million worth of products, has worked with over 700 clients in 50 different markets, including some of the world's greatest brands, like the Miami Dolphins and the UFC. Alex is the author of the new book, The Anti-Hustler's Handbook, a step-by-step guide for hardworking entrepreneurs who want to redefine success now and discover infinite choices for fulfillment without sacrificing everything that matters. Alex, I'm so excited that you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. What an amazing intro. I love the Iron Man line. You know, my copywriter did a really good job with that. So appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. And I'd love for you to share some of your story with our listeners, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. How did you get started?
Yeah, I think I actually got started because of my parents, and the way that they led. I grew up in a religious Jewish community. I'd go to temple every Saturday, the Sabbath. And my dad was the president of the temple when I was of bar mitzvah age. So from 11 to 14 years old, my dad was the president of the temple, and my mom was the president of the sisterhood, which is like the women's group at the temple. My mom is a big proponent of community and engaging in, being a provider. She definitely has the classic Jewish mom vibes for sure. She'd have people over every single Friday night dinner for the Sabbath, and she'd be kind of freaking out for the first 4 days of the week. Then Friday comes, she's excited, and then she's ready to do it again next week. And just watching my parents be leaders in their community and lead my family with the appropriate, frameworks of love and kindness and care, being a good person and helping other people, I think really struck a chord with me and made me want to be that type of leader. In general, I'm a very boisterous person, a very loud person, a very type A person. I've always been that way. When I was little, I was always the loudest person in the room. I still am usually the loudest person in the room. Pretty common for me. I like being the center of attention, and it's okay to just be upfront and willing to understand that's who I am. And so I think, just leadership came to me fairly naturally, but also unexpectedly and much more challenging than I thought it would be. When it came to business and opportunities, I had to lead the charge for my small marketing agency to become a much larger agency in order to develop it. And then, of course, the biggest leadership of running Prospecting on Demand from 2016 to now, and working with now over 1,000 clients. I have to update that, which is insane. It's just a crazy number to consider. And how many people we lead. And we talk a lot, William, about provisions and our requirements of who we provide. And as leaders, the provisions we have are for ourselves and our family, to our team and to our clients. And, on a running basis, on a daily basis, leading roughly about 100 people total, it bears certainly a weight, but it's a worthwhile weight and something I'm super proud of to do. I try my best to do it as effectively as I possibly can with the right support around me. And it's a fun journey. And so, taking it one day at a time to be the best leader I can be. And the leadership that matters most to be is, being the best dad I could be, to, lead my son and showcase the appropriate, steps to take. And I try to remind that to every single client I work with of what we're really here for, what we're really doing. And 99% of the time, it's for something much bigger than making money or impacting agency owners or helping, businesses. It's usually related to some sort of family result, whether it's kids or spouse or parents, like giving back to parents, giving everything they want for their spouse, or giving everything they want to their kids. And so that leadership to me is really what is the most important.
So much of your story centers around the lessons that you've learned, the insights that you've gleaned. And your book is called The Anti-Hustler's Handbook. And you talk in the book about how that comes out of your journey, your experience, how you hustled yourself into a very unhealthy place.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah. So when I was 18 years old, I had a regular checkup at the doctor, and everything was, going totally normally until they were, put the stethoscope out and checked my heart. He was checking a little bit overzealously, more than usual, and asked him, is something wrong? And he mentioned that I have a heart murmur. Did I know I had a heart murmur? In which obviously I said no. This doctor had been my doctor since I was an infant. So it was very shocking to me that had never been found. Ended up finding out that I was born with a congenital heart defect called a bicuspid aortic valve. Long story short, basically my heart, aortic valve did not close properly. So blood leaked back into the heart every time it pumped. And so when it over pumps to get the blood back out, ultimately, like any muscle, it grows. And so the doctor had made a comment to me at that point that pretty much 100% guaranteed to have surgery within your lifetime, but more than likely you'll be 50, 60 years old. And, by that time, medicine will have progressed so much, yada, 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 won't be a big thing. So just go live your life, 18-year-old. And so I talk about in this book, the concept of, what success means to people, and this idea that, we're all born with, unfortunately, a death sentence. And I think a lot of people don't want to talk about it. I get why. I respect why. More people talk about it as they get older. I think most people in their 20s and 30s really don't want to discuss it unless they've had, unfortunately, been involved with that, whether through a, personal relationship they have with their nuclear family, their parents or their brothers and sisters, or outside family, cousins, uncles, aunts, or friends. And, some people you meet and they haven't been touched by it at all and they're 25, and other people you meet and they've been devastated by it and they're 25. And I think that showcases a really different understanding of the quality of life and respecting time that we have. And in the book, I talk about the sands of time, this idea that we all have this metaphorical hourglass, and we're constantly borrowing from the future sand. Like, oh, we'll have that time. We'll sacrifice this time now to do more work because we'll have the sand in the future. And so 18-year-old Alex, you would consider I have a lot more sand left, but now we're getting told that I have heart surgery and the chances of it is very high. So in my mind, the concept was, well, now, the sand that I have is a lot less than what I anticipated it would be. And so because of that, I put my hard hat on with the idea of like, I'm just going to work extra hard. And I used to have that as like a badge of honor, really. Like, I'm the best hustler. I'm not a hustler. I'm the best hustler. I'm the world's greatest hustler. I'm the wolf. I'm the dog. I'm the guy. Like, and I believed in that so much. And because I believed in that, I took in content that matched that, right? So David Goggins yelling at me while he's running a 5-minute mile and telling me that I'm not doing, fast enough, or Jocko Willink saying I need to wake up at 4 a.m. to be like a Marine, even though I have no interest in being a Marine. Thank you to everyone that is, supports our country and serves. It's just not for me. I don't want to be a Marine. And so I just ate up that content. I was really interested in that. And then, I realized the ramifications of it. And the ramifications are pretty simple. And the idea was, if you put a car in overdrive, indefinitely, eventually that engine is going to explode. And metaphorically, what ended up happening was, I put my car into overdrive for too long, and I went to the doctor every single year. I'd get a checkup, and 10 years after I was told, it was 11 years after I was told that I would have to have surgery, the doctor told me I had to come back into the office, which had never happened before. Why do I have to come back into the office? They don't tell you why. You have to tell you in person, but why you have to go back in. So I remember going back into the office and the doctor telling me, that I have to have surgery. And I think the easy way to explain how skewed my brain was at the time was, we were prepping for our first large event for Prospecting on Demand. The event was scheduled for February 28th and 29th. It was a leap year, and March 1st of 2020. I'm sure everyone remembers what happened in March 2020. And the first thing I asked was, can we postpone my surgery until after the event? And so even though I was told in front of my face that your sands might be gone forever, you might lose all the sand that you had, that you thought you had, my first intention and still focus was on business. And I think it was just a really apropos moment to remember and keep in mind, like, how badly skewed my priorities were at that time. Only to realize, thinking, like, really the heavy news hit me when I had to call my parents and tell them, which I will never forget. Obviously, probably the worst phone call I've ever made, doing that and telling them that I'd have the surgery. I had accelerated my heart problem by roughly 30, 40 years. Thankfully the surgery went well. And since it went well, in that process, because of COVID, the surgery was not just postponed from December to March, it was postponed from March to June, and then from June to October. So it took me 10 months from the time that I was told that I needed to have the surgery to have the surgery. Those 10 months were for sure the hardest of my life. And in the midst of those 10 months, my wife found out that we were pregnant with my first child, who's now 2.5 years old, which is insane. And my son was born 117 days after my surgery. And so I think it just put a really clear understanding of what priorities need to be in life. And so in the book, the reason I wrote it is to try to help people understand that there's other ways to define success, and that you can't just continue to borrow from future sand that you're mortgaging, that you have no idea if you have it or not. We all want to pretend that we have an invincibility complex and that will never happen to me, and I'll never be the one that has heart surgery. I'll never one that dies in a car accident. I'll never have cancer, and I will never have any issues in my life. But the reality is, it happens to people. It just does. I'm sure William and I both agree that we don't want that for you. We don't, but we don't control that. No matter how much you pray on it, no matter how much you want it to not happen, it happens. And it happens to good people, not just bad people, right? I genuinely think I am a good human being. I really try to be a good human being. I didn't deserve to be born with a genetic heart defect. I didn't deserve to have open heart surgery, but it happened, right? Because that's how life is sometimes. And the great part is, and the perspective I have now is, how amazing is it that I'm able to be alive and have such little ramifications on my life when I did have open heart surgery and I did have my son born 117 days later. And here we are nearly 3 years later. October 15th will be 3 years. And I'm good, I'm good. And I'm grateful for that. Physically, I'm good, at least. And that's something that is really impactful. So I wrote the book for myself, to remind myself of the priorities that I need to take, but also for entrepreneurs who want to potentially define success in a different way, instead of only listening to the world that we live in, which is just consistently hustle culture. If once you get more, you need to do more, and it needs to be more and more. No matter what, it's always more. And more is the only answer. There couldn't be anything else other than more. And so there is another answer. There is a different way. It just comes down to definition and really putting in that work to define it. And that's what the book is all about.
Alex, listening to your story, and of course we've talked before about this, and I'm blown away every time you talk about this, by how you let this event, which for some people can cause them to just crumble. Instead, you chose to make this a catalytic moment. You chose to say, okay, this is not going to destroy me. I'm going to take this and I'm going to use it in a different way. And that's what you've done. I mean, you've taken an experience that is horrifying, for a 28, 29-year-old to get news like this, with a child on the way. You took this and said, hey, okay, I'm going to get through this. And then on the other side of it, you're like, how can I help other people not hit the ditches that I drove into? How can I help them avoid those ditches? And that's one of the things I loved about your book. Reading through it, it's incredibly practical. It is just bathed in personal experience, personal stories. And I'll say this again toward the end of the show, but if you don't have a copy of this book, this is one you're going to want to get, because it's one you're going to dog ear the pages. You're going to make notes in the margins. This is one that's going to hit you at a different level, because every entrepreneur, every business owner, every agency owner, every leader that I talk to struggles with this more mindset. Hustle harder, do more, acquire more, sacrifice more, for that day that's going to come. And a friend of mine once told me that, we wake up every day and think that day is going to be just like the day before. And so often that's true until it's not. You had that experience. Our family had that experience with my daughter and her brain tumor, her cancer. We didn't see that coming. You didn't see that coming. And so often it's exactly like what you said. We just think we've got plenty of sand until one day something happens. You talk about this in the book, and you talk about the traps that people fall into. One of those is called the freelancer's trap. I'd love for you to unpack that just a little bit.
Yeah, the freelancer's trap is a really common entrepreneurial misstep. It's the idea that we can carry all of the weight and responsibility of a business on our shoulders, and then think eventually that we'll hand it off. But we kind of get trapped by not understanding how to say no. Mm-hmm. And so the concept that I see very often is, if you break down simply, a business into three components of, generating sales opportunities, closing sales opportunities, and then delivering upon the service, right? That's a very oversimplified version of any business, but in general, that's what we see, right? If you do all three of those things consistently, which is very common. So for example, you go to a BNI and you speak at a BNI to generate sales opportunities. You book 5 sales calls at the BNI and you have 5 sales calls. You close 2 of those 5 sales calls, but one is a doctor that you're doing a website for, and another is a attorney that you're doing SEO for. Now the opportunity cost of doing those fulfillment services withholds you from being able to go book more meetings, close more deals, and service more clients. Now, some people are very gifted and capable of managing a huge amount of freelancer weight. And I mean huge, like it is feasible to do a 6-figure income on a freelancer weight. The mental weight of it is significantly more damaging than the physical weight. But in general, what will end up happening is burnout is a guarantee. It's not potential, it's guaranteed, because at some point you'll recognize 1 year down the line, 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, or longer. And I've seen it happen many times, that you've just been freelancing it this whole time, that you never actually built a company or a business, that you are the business. And so in the book, one of the anecdotes I talk about was, my dad's experience when I was younger. When I was 14 years old, my dad had a catastrophic stroke. Thank God today he's alive and well, which is amazing. But at that time, he had started his own business 2 years prior, and he was very successful due to his community connections. But he didn't have a business. He didn't have documented processes. He didn't have anyone to help him. It was just him. He was the business. And so when he got sick, he couldn't work for a year. And when you're a financial advisor, no matter how much someone loves you and cares about you, at some point, if you cannot do the work for that person, they have to leave and go work with someone else. And so he lost the whole business because it was a freelance business. And so this was the first lesson that I had. And it was actually the first onus to developing prospecting on demand for agency owners, even before I had my own issue, with the intention of, hey, don't get stuck in the freelance model. Don't say yes to everything. And what I commonly see is we call it a Subayoda. And the joke is, it's like you're a Frankenstein agency. You're combining a Subaru and a Toyota, and you're just smashing them together, thinking that that's going to work because you're just going to say yes to every single offer and every single angle because you think the money is so necessary. But the opportunity cost of the time you're taking from that is really bad. And so we recommend instead developing a single product, a single niche, and focusing on doing something that's replicable and repeatable and predictable for scale. And I get it. It is boring, but simple and boring win. the perceived value of complexity is one of the greatest challenges of entrepreneurship in today's day and age, especially with the amount of stimuli we have. There's an enormous amount of information and stimuli available, more than ever before in history. And so when you're constantly getting ideas from everyone else, it becomes really, really challenging to simplify because everyone else is making it very complex. But the people that are having their most success financially and emotionally is through simplification. People try to make passion and profit happen together at the same time so often, and it's very, very challenging. It's a gift if you're capable of creating passion and profit at the same time. There's nothing wrong with creating profit and then pursuing passion. That's an okay thing to do, because if you pursue passion only with profit, you're almost guaranteed to either wane on the passion or not make enough profit in general. And that's what we see a lot of times with the freelancer trap.
I think everybody listening is scribbling right now, writing down so much of what you just said that is so helpful and is so practical for so many of the leaders that I talk to. They fall into that freelancer trap. It's like it's this giant gaping hole that's in front of everybody. How do you avoid that? How do you get around this? If you have found yourself in it, what's your next step?
Yeah. So the first thing to do is understand that if you have a Frankenstein agency, and you're working with 5 different types of industries with 4 different types of products and 3 different price points, and you have like a VA from the Philippines helping you, the one thing that you can do is you don't have to necessarily throw that business away. What you have to do, though, is be willing to take significantly less profit. What you have to find is the freelancer that's going to take it over for you. So I have a client that we worked with named Eric Haskin. He's a great guy, super intelligent human being. And he came to us with a very successful freelance business that he's been running for roughly 20 years. And it's called Charlotte Media Partners. And his business consists of roughly 8 different products, from one-off products like web design to ongoing products like SEO or website management, with probably 6 to 12 different price points, but really only him and like one VA. And so what we identified was this business was making about like $25,000 a month, but it was just impossible to scale because there is no real product. It's just a bunch of random things put together. And so what we did is we brought someone in, right, to have Eric be shadowing Eric for roughly 2 months. And then we gave that person about a 30% margin of what this business is. So basically paying them about $5,000 to $6,000. Yes, Eric's revenue dropped and profit dropped, but his time availability increased by roughly 80%. And with that time available now, what he's capable of doing is building a business. And so what he did was he focused on building an attorney marketing agency, offering a $2,500 marketing service from Google Ads to every single client he works with that has a roughly $1,100 consistent profit for every single client. And then he built a client acquisition system by running ads and doing cold email, the same thing over and over. Then he would have the same calls over and over. And then he would bring them into the business and he would deliver the same onboarding experience over and over. And that replication built what is essentially an agency assembly line, something that is the consistent same quality of product that he can provide that's easy to sell and also easy to delegate. And that business, just about 2 months ago, over 9 months, was able to get 3 months straight over $100,000 in revenue. So yes, he did have to hand off the Frankenstein agency, which he still has, and the person he hired still works with. You don't have to cancel it altogether. It's just you need to remove yourself from it and understand the collateral damage that comes with it. And the collateral damage is pretty easy to understand. Some clients will be disappointed that you are no longer POC, and they can either choose to leave or they can choose to be okay with the current person that you put in place. And 2, you will make less money up front. But the time value of your money is way greater because now you can focus on building a real business. And that's what it takes.
You said that hustle culture always leads to burnout.
Always.
And I'm thinking about the story that you just told with Eric. Like if he had continued down the path he was, but said, I've got to make more money. I've just got to work harder. I've just got to hustle more.
Yeah.
Which is what so many people say. That's what they think. That's what they do. What are some of the early signs that you are nearing that burnout point?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I would say also related to Eric, when he joined POD, he joined with the understanding that he was in burnout, that he had already gone through the position of saying those hustleisms, which is part of the book, of expressing like, if I just work a little bit harder, I just work a little bit harder. But he came to me with the beautiful clarity of like, I'm saying I need to work a little harder, but I'm like really working very hard. I don't really understand why my brain is saying I need to work harder. And it's because there's no other possible area, right? If you play that game from Bob Barker's game, I forget what it's called.
The Price is Right. Yeah.
Right. So one of them is called Plinko, right? I think it's like you drop a ball and it falls into, any number of options, right? Well, when your brain drops the ball of how do I solve this problem? And the only option consistently is work harder, work harder, work harder. At some point, you'll get to a position of I'm literally at 95%, 99%, 100% of work harder. How could I work harder? It's impossible. Now what we have to do is open up the options. You got to find the other available things, right? And so when you start finding yourself in the position of waking up with fright, with working on the weekends, with working and you think it's normal 12, 13-hour days, when you are constantly stuck drowning in fulfillment and starting every month back at zero without any security net whatsoever, it's very likely that you're going to lead into burnout. People that are much more emotional and type A personalities have a much faster time going into burnout, whereas people that are more, type B and aren't as emotional, more pragmatic, might not have burnout for a really long time. I'm talking about multiple years. I've worked with some web design agencies that every single month for 20 years, they start back at zero because they have no recurring model at all. And they didn't really have burnout. They just were disheartened. And those are two very different things. But eventually, burnout will happen, especially if you're someone that is an emotional person, wears their heart on their sleeves, really cares a lot about the work that you put in. Eventually, you're going to get burnt out and disheartened because you're not progressing the way that you want to. And the easiest way to know it is by the sure telltale signs of I'm tired, I'm frustrated, I'm short with people that I care about, I'm not feeling good physically and mentally, I'm having a hard time sleeping, I wake up in terror, I go to sleep thinking about clients, and I'm constantly in a state of worry. That means you're going into burnout or you're already there. And that is a very dangerous place to be. And it means that you need to do something about it immediately.
And that's why you wrote the book.
100%. One of the concepts that we talk about is the idea of how many red lights you've run. Okay. A yellow light means you should slow down, but we all know what actually a yellow light means to most drivers in the United States. It means speed up so I can get through it before I get to the red light. And I certainly do the same. So I'm not saying that that's some horrible thing, but it happens. The bigger problem though is when we start running red lights. And running red lights is when you express to yourself like, oh my God, I'm so tired, but then you still push through. Running a red light once or twice or three times, okay, not the end of the world. But every time you run a red light, there's a serious danger that can happen, both metaphorically and literally. Obviously, literally, every single time that a red light is run, you're putting yourself at danger and someone else in danger, right? William, you told me something really valuable about a year ago. You said, hurt people hurt people. When you run a red light, you're a hurt person potentially hurting someone. And that's very dangerous, right? Now, metaphorically, what I mean when you're running a red light, it's when your body is trying to give you the signs of I'm tired, I need a break, I'm emotionally spent, I don't have anything more. And your mindset only falls into that Plinko board of you got to work harder. Yeah. And work harder is just telling you to keep running red lights. And so the metaphor that I would give you is how many red lights have you run? How many red lights have you run? I had a sales call or an onboarding call with a client that joined POD about a week ago. Really good guy. And on the call, he said, I just want to mention, like, I don't think I have like any more emotional availability for sales calls, right? So we had to continue the conversation. I brought that back up as a red flag. I'm like, how long have you been saying that for? He's like, oh, probably 3 months. I'm like, how many other red lights are you running through consistently? How often? Because at some point, you're not going to be able to say it anymore and you're just going to like have nothing, or you're going to just do a horrible job consistently on your calls because you don't have the emotional availability, like you just said. And you need emotional availability for that. And that's something that's really important. So just understand what the red lights are for you and start trying to identify how many times am I really running them.
It's so practical and so helpful. And I think that's going to speak to a lot of people. It certainly speaks to me at different parts of my journey as I look back, because there are times in my life when I can see, man, I just had the pedal down, just flat down to the floor. Red, yellow, green, doesn't matter. Just keep going. Just keep going. Just work harder. If you could go back, if something happened and you were able to go back and talk to the 20-year-old version of Alex, what would you love to tell yourself?
Give yourself grace.
Give
yourself grace. I'm a words of affirmation person. That's my love language. Great book also by Gary Chapman.
Yeah.
I love empowering people. I love doing it. It's probably my favorite thing in the entire planet. I love getting on stage and I know that I'm very capable of empowering people when I'm on stage and also one-to-one, but particularly when I'm on stage with a group of people that have never seen me on stage before, I get so excited because I know what I'm capable of bringing. And I know the truth is the majority of most speakers at most events, they're not gifted speakers. They're just gifted at the skill that they're sharing, which is fine. No problem. Most people don't care. I care because I know that I'm a gifted speaker. And so I get a little flustered when it's like constantly listening to not good speakers with good content, right? But I know I'm both. And I love the opportunity to not just share good content, but to light someone up, to fire them up. Just like a head coach would in football. Like I love that stuff. I love getting fired up by motivation. Like I just love that. And I love being that person. And so, to me, I empower people a lot, but I think the voice in my head over the last 10 years is majority negative. Like I have immense self-confidence and capability. I very rarely have failed at anything that I've set my mind to in life or in business, which I'm super grateful for. And yet, as if some weird chip on your shoulder, it's just necessary to be like, you're not doing enough. You're not good enough. You're not working hard enough. You're all of those elements, right? No matter how much you tell yourself not to be that way, you just keep doing it. And so I've heard many different comments from, different coaches and mindset people related to the value of positive psychology and this idea of, putting down the metaphorical bat and picking up the feather and being kinder to yourself. And I think, in the world that we live in, I think more people want more grace and more kindness, less shortness and frustration. Because at the end of the day, everyone is going through something. You just don't know what they're going through. And some people are more willing to share it and not. I truly believe vulnerability and transparency is the bridge to connection. It's where people are able to break down walls and feel comfortable sharing uncomfortable things. You talk about truth is kindness, right? And I agree with that. I believe in that wholeheartedly. And so to me, if I could go back, I would express like the amount of grace that I share with others. If I could just share that to myself more, would be good, because the way that I light people up, it would be healthy if I could light myself up more. And I think that would be a really good piece of advice.
I love that. And I think that's one that every one of us can take to heart.
Absolutely.
Because we all have that voice, right? And the voice, I think, could really be the voice of hustle culture.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's just constantly driving you down, just constantly tackling you and saying, hey, it's not enough yet. Keep going. It's not enough yet.
There's a concept of hustle culture that is just a bold-faced lie. I'll never agree to it or believe in it. But the mindset of people that say, I work better with my back against the wall. That is just 100% patently false. No one works better with their back against the wall, right? The pressure makes diamonds. Oh my God, like such an outrageously stupid comment. Like so stupid. It's just so silly to make up that, like utilizing that as a metaphor. When you have more pressure, it's like, okay, but wouldn't it be nice to be able to work in flow state and without an immense amount of pressure and like putting the stakes so high? People equivalate their business to the same stakes that an airline pilot would have, or a surgeon would have, or a police officer would have, or a firefighter would have. Those people have the highest stakes every day, every single day. I don't want my doctor going into my surgery and being like, well, whatever happens, happens. No, like he has to be perfect. He has to be perfect. As a business coach, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to hold myself to that standard because the stakes are low. They're low. Yeah, people pay me. And yes, I try to give the best advice possible. And that's not saying that I'm ambivalent to it or indifferent related to what the results are. It's just, I'm not, a heart surgeon, and I'm not an airline pilot who crashed the plane and killed half the people and be like, I'll do better on the next one. And so if you lower the stakes, instead of saying, I'm just going to be in a pressure cooker at all times, what ends up happening if you're in a pressure cooker at all times? You implode, just like the Titan that just imploded the Titanic vessel. It's the same exact thing. You're going to explode or implode or break, whatever word you want to use, right? So the idea of that pressure makes diamonds, like in a season, at a certain time, but it can't just be a never-ending pressure, right? It's going to make you explode. And that's a super common problem that I see.
Seasons come and go. But if you're always in it, That's not a season.
It's just life. Something that we've spoken about many times, the idea and concept of, I believe in the concept of seasons, but if there is no off season, well, then you have to come to a realization of this isn't a season, this is life. And there needs to be a wake-up call on it, right? Yeah. That's been the hardest part of writing the book. I had to finish the book. It felt like at the end of the book, it kind of felt like I was hustling the anti-hustle book. And I felt so disappointed in myself. I felt so defeated. But at the end of the day, it was, that was just the season, right? I just have to do it. And then the next season was, I got this event. And then the next season with this. And it's like, are you practicing what you preach? And I think it's a very common thing to have imposter syndrome and to not be perfect. And that's why, the cobbler's shoes are always the worst. The maid's house is the most uncleanly. This is just a common thing that people do. And instead of giving yourself grace, you punish yourself. You say you're not doing good enough. You're not worthy of this. And I think that's the thing. It's just a never ending cycle of negativity. And if we can bring ourselves out of it together by helping one another, that's what leadership is. Leadership is not being sanctimonious and saying I'm better than you. Leadership is being vulnerable about the flaws that you have to express that to other people that are being led by you to understand that the flaws that you are having are not death sentences. They're just make you human. Right. And at the end of the day, that's all that I am. I'm just human with a little bit of Iron Man inside of my heart.
Alex, you've dropped so much gold today. This has been so insightful. I'll ask you the thing I ask everybody. If people walk away from this episode with one thing, what do you want that one thing to be?
If you have your parents still with you, call them today and say that you love them. It's definitely the number one thing I'd want you to tell them. If you don't have your parents with you, your closest relative, closest friend, there's a concept of giving flowers, right? And it's really disheartening how we see, all the time, famous people that pass away or regular people that pass away, not famous. That's when everyone comes out of the woodwork to talk about how great they are. And as someone who's a word of affirmations person, it's like, why do we always wait? Why do we wait till they can't know anymore, regardless of whatever your religious beliefs are? I'm just talking about the physical world that we live in, right? Why do we wait? And so don't wait. Don't wait. Time is too valuable. I remember, like I said, calling my parents and telling them about it, that I had to have the surgery was horrible. It's a terrible experience. Worst call I've ever made. And at some point, unfortunately, in my life, the likelihood is I'm going to get a call about something going wrong with my parents. That's just the reality of life. That is just the reality. I don't want to wait till the last second or where you don't even get a chance whatsoever. So, I try to do that every single day. I try to express my gratitude to as many people as I possibly can every single day. And I think if you listen to anything from this, not only giving yourself love, but go give some flowers. Go give some flowers to the people you care about, especially your parents, if they're still here, especially.
So much wisdom there. So much experience.
Yeah.
Alex, thank you for being so generous today. I know folks are going to want to stay connected with you and continue to learn from you. They can get the book on Amazon. What are other ways they can learn from you and stay connected?
I'm on every platform, basically. You can find me at Alex Schlinsky pretty much anywhere. AlexSchlinsky.com, prospectingondemand.com, my Facebook group, 7-Figure Sales Savages. Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find online, pretty good at it. Share content every single day, and always trying to be out there. And I'll finish with this comment related to content. William, last week, met someone that has been following me for a while, and they asked me, how do you do this so easily? And I was like, what way do you think this is easy? Where did you get that concept? Like, all the posts that you do on social media. I'm like, that is the smallest window, 1% of what I choose to put on there. This is not easy in any way. And so just a reminder for anyone that does end up following me, which I'm grateful for, or follows anyone else, not everyone's just airing all the laundry out there. Everyone's going through something, right? Give a little bit more love and grace to yourself, your loved ones, and also the people that you follow. And don't just lionize someone because of the stuff that they post on social media. You have no idea the circumstances of what's happening. Focus on your race. That's the best thing you could do. And that would be my number one goal for anyone that is listening to anything I ever share.
Fantastic way to tie a bow on this. Alex, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me for this episode today. As we wrap up, I'd love for you to do two things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to discover this podcast. Second, if you don't have a copy of my newest book, Catalytic Leadership, I'd love to put a copy in your hands. If you go to catalyticleadershipbook.com, you can get a copy for free. Just pay the shipping so I can get it to you, and we'll get one right out. My goal is to put this into the hands of as many leaders as possible. This book captures principles that I've learned in 20 plus years of coaching leaders in the entrepreneurial space, in business, government, nonprofits, education, and the local church. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm currently learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take a next step with a coach to help you intentionally grow and thrive as a leader, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to catalyticleadership.net to book a call with me. Stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, leaders, choose to be catalytic.
Thanks for listening to Catalytic Leadership with Dr. William Attaway. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode. Want more? Go to catalyticleadership.net.